Welcome to Skomer, a seabird's island utopia of global importance. At this time of year, these towering cliffs are home to a myriad of species. Manx shearwater, guillemots, razorbills.
But the most colourful and charismatic of all has got to be the Atlantic Puffins.
It's breeding season, with 40,000 puffins heading back to the island after spending winter spread across the Atlantic.
Puffins return to the same burrow year after year, where they're reunited with their mate and spend time developing a chick known as a puffling. But the adults are busy little birds. They spend a lot of their time out foraging because each individual has to eat roughly 40 sand eels a day to sustain themselves.
These little fish make up 3/4 of a puffin's diet and are therefore vital to the success of a colony. But finding them isn't always easy.
They were having to go.
Dr. Matt Wood is from the University of Gloucestershire. And over the past 10 years, he's been tracking puffin colonies across the UK, many of which are in decline.
So all these squares illustrate puffin colonies around the UK?
That's right. So the red ones are colonies that are decreasing in size. Like Fair Isle up there, south of Shetland, that's declined from something like 80,000 to 6,000 odd in the last 20 years. And that's pretty certainly linked to the changing temperatures in the ocean and the changing numbers of sand eels that are around.
When sand eels are harder to find, it impacts the adult's ability to successfully raise their chicks, forcing the puffins to hunt further from home.
There was a study that was done by Annette Faye recently.
Right.
She went to lots of different puffin colonies. To this colony off the north coast of Norway, instead of going 5, 10, 20 kilometres, they were having to go up to 50, 60 kilometres to be able to get enough food to feed their chick. In the North Sea, it's a shallower sea. I think it's much more impacted by climate change, and it's got a lot more countries around it and quite intense fishing pressure.
3 years ago, UK boats were banned from catching sand eels. That ban didn't extend to boats from the EU, which have traditionally taken over 250,000 tonnes of sand eels from the North Sea every year. However, a few weeks ago, the ban was extended to all boats in UK waters. This is going to be great news for puffin colonies around the UK. The waters around Skomer are a protected marine conservation zone, and trawling the seabed for fish, where sand eels spend most of their time, is banned. The puffin colony here is booming, thanks in part to a healthy sand eel population close to their breeding site.
The fact that these puffins have the ability to go and hunt locally is so important because it gives them more time to focus on socialising and raising their young. But to see these charismatic animals in their element, I can't just stay on the land. I've got to go undercover in the water as well.
Richard Rees is a qualified diving instructor who takes people out to see puffins in the water here. He works closely with the Wildlife Trust, which manages Skomer Island, to ensure the puffins' well-being.
For us, we have one rule, and that is basically the wildlife always comes to us. They are a very sort of social bird, and the technique a friend of ours who's an artist came up with was using puffin decoys.
Right.
As a way to pique their curiosity. I think you're going to enjoy this.
I've got to put that on my head.
We're going to have that on your head. And then we've got some that float next to us as well. So we actually become a puffin raft.
This is outrageous. I love it.
The jury is out on how scientific my disguise is, and it's important to maintain a safe distance from the puffins at all times, at least a couple of metres. But the puffins don't seem bothered by me being here. And from a puffin's eye view, it's great to see such a thriving population.
Oh gosh, I don't even know how to describe that. Definitely one of the best seabirding encounters I've ever had. Took a little while to be accepted by the group of puffins, but once you were just engulfed by thousands of them. Well, I felt like thousands of them, and they were everywhere. And to see they're relaxed and they've kind of accepted you, or whatever they think you are with this silly hat on. Yeah, a really special moment to get a view into their secretive lives out at sea.
If Skomer is an example of how puffins can thrive, it gives me hope that thanks to the recent sand eel fishing ban, populations along the east coast of Britain could recover to more sustainable levels and help secure the future for this very special little bird.
How amazing was that to be able to get in the water with the puffins? I'm a tiny bit jealous of Meg's there because, as you know, puffins are one of my favourite birds.
We are aware of that, yeah.
One of my favourite birds, but very sadly, a fast declining bird. We've lost 1 in 4 of our puffins around the UK coast since 2000. That's a catastrophic decline. It's absolutely terrible. And the more we know about them, the more we understand, the more we can protect them, just like any species. And so the RSPB has been running a citizen science project called Puffarazzi. And they asked anyone who was lucky enough to go to a puffin colony to take a picture of any birds they saw with sand eels in their beaks so they could analyse what they were bringing back to their prey. And the results were very clear. They basically showed that in the Shetland colonies significantly had lower biomass than all the other colonies studied. And you can see that in this photograph because the picture of the puffin from Shetland, lots of poor quality prey. You can see juvenile transparent sand eels and about 2 grams per catch. The Chiant colony, which is more stable, fewer fish per mouthful, bigger fish, 3.1 grams. But basically, I mean, Shetland was worse off, but all of the sand eel colonies have completely collapsed. The good news is that in March there was a ban put on, as Meg said, banning the fishing of sand eels. The bad news is the EU are contesting that. So fingers crossed that the EU don't win, because if that ban stays in place, it could be a real turning point, not just for puffins, but for lots of other seabirds as well.
Yeah, I think we've got to admit that when it comes to terrestrial conservation, and Arne is symbolic of that, we're really good at making a difference for the wildlife once we get into action. But when it comes to our marine protected areas, we're not as good. 92% of the UK's marine protected areas are still impacted by destructive fishing practices. 90% of the European ones still allow bottom trawling, about the most destructive practice that you can possibly imagine. So here, the UK has taken the lead. It's acting to protect our seabirds, and we have to be robust.
It's tragic, isn't it, what is happening in our seas? And as you say, so much of it goes unnoticed.
Indeed.